The Whitmore family's annual strategic summit was a polished affair. Hosted in their Charleston headquarters, historic red brick building remodeled into a sleek, glass-paneled command center overlooking the Ashley River. It had been 5 years since I last walked these halls. I was 27 then, freshly graduated from Columbia with dual master's degrees in business analytics and industrial engineering. That was also the day I was publicly dismissed by my uncle, Charles Whitmore. Today, I walked in not as Sienna Blake, the non-blood niece they pushed out, but as CEO of Meridian Core Solutions. Quietly, we had become Whitmore Industries' largest private client, channeling just over $74 million through their procurement network. They had no idea it was me. The numbers this quarter are holding strong. My cousin Bennett declared, tapping through yet another flashy presentation. Thanks largely to our long-term anchor account, Meridian Core Solutions. I stirred my espresso with practiced calm, hiding the grin threatening my composure. I still remembered Bennett's words from 5 years ago. You're brilliant, Sienna. But this isn't your place. Family runs on legacy and name. Uncle Charles had nodded in agreement. Talent is fine, but blood is permanent. I looked down at my tablet, pulling up internal financial files delivered by a helpful former intern who'd grown tired of watching fraud go unchecked. Bennett had been cooking numbers for 10 months' losses masked by creative accounting, gaps, plugged only by the uninterrupted flow of Meridian's contracts. Miss Blake. A soft voice broke my thoughts. It was Lena, Uncle Charles's executive assistant. She gestured to the boardroom doors. They're ready for your presentation. I rose, smoothing the lapel of my tailored charcoal suit, sharp lines, understated. Powa, far cry from the department store dress I wore when I was told I'd never be Whitmore material. As I approached the podium, Bennett froze mid-slide. Sienna, what are you doing here? This meeting is for senior executives only. Locking eyes with every confused face at the table. I'm here representing Meridian Core Solutions. We need to renegotiate our contracts immediately before renewal. Silence. Uncle Charles narrowed his eyes. That's not how this works. Meridian always sends a contracted intermediary. I smiled. They do. And you're looking at her. Silence. Ben looked like he'd forgotten how to blink. My cousin Carolyn dropped her silver stylus onto the conference table, the sound oddly loud against the tension in the room. Then came the wave, the slow, sinking realization sweeping across every carefully powdered face in the boardroom. That's not possible. Uncle Charles finally said, his voice catching. You running some small consulting firm? We did a full background check, Caroline added, brow furrowing. You were with what? A boutique operations group. I tapped my tablet. The screen behind me shifted to my own presentation. The boutique group was a front, I said evenly. Meridian Core Solutions, formerly Blake Systems Integration, is mine. I've owned and scaled it for the last 5 years. Collective gasp. Someone actually whispered, no. Just like that, the girl they dismissed had become the woman there. Survival depended on. The first slide illuminated with quiet power. Meridian Core Solutions 2023 Audited Financial Summary. Annual revenue, 2.3x that of Whitmore Industries. 12 international offices. A global logistics footprint that dwarfed their regional reach. Beneath that, a client roster spanning 9 Fortune 500 companies. Bennett shot to his feet, his face drained of color. That's not too, can't be, what? I interrupted, cool and calm. The intern you mocked at the leadership mixer. The niece who didn't have the Whitmore pedigree, or the woman who owns the company currently keeping your balance sheets from imploding. The boardroom rippled with murmurs. Heads turned, eyes narrowed. We would have known, Bennett insisted. Would you? I raised an eyebrow. It's the same way you knew about the $7,900,000 concealed through deferred receivables and fake inventory allocations. He froze. The directors turned to one another, alarmed whispers rising. I've spent the past 5 years turning Meridian into what it is, I continued, voice unwavering. While you were too busy clinking champagne over my absence, I became your biggest client and your last safety net. Across the table, Uncle Charles gripped the armrest of his chair, knuckles white. Why come forward now? He asked almost in a whisper. I advanced to the next slide, a clean analysis of Whitmore's dependency on Meridian. The numbers were devastating because it's time to renegotiate, I said simply. And based on what I've uncovered, I'm not sure there's anything worth saving. You can't just pull out, Bennett snapped. Those contracts expire in? For business days, I replied. And as CEO, I'm no longer convinced your company is stable enough to trust. The room erupted. Directors shouted questions. Caroline turned pale, and Charles, he didn't say a word. He just stared at me like he was seeing me for the very first time. Carolyn muttered something about corporate liability under her breath, but her voice was swallowed by the chaos swelling behind her. I remained still, measured, composed. Let the panic settle on them first. I'll be calling an emergency audit meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I said evenly, gathering my tablet and files into a sleek leather folder. My team will be presenting a full forensic review of your financial activity. I suggest you come prepared. This is about revenge, isn't it? Bennett said, his voice cracking despite his best efforts to keep it firm. Because we didn't give you a seat at the table. I paused at the doorway. The memory of that afternoon 5 years ago hit me like a cold wind. Bennett's smug dismissal. Uncle Charles's firm rejection. Caroline's snide laugh as I walked out of the office with my resume in one hand and disappointment tightening in my chest. No, Bennett, I replied, locking eyes with him. This isn't revenge. I took a step closer. This is business. The same business you said I'd never understand. I glanced at my watch. 9 sharp. Don't be late. I turned, letting the tension marinate behind me. The voices fractured Caroline, demanding clarification. Charles barking orders, then babbling defenses. No one believed anymore. Michael stood waiting by the elevator, professional as always, offering a chilled bottle of sparkling water. They're unraveling, said with a small smirk. Exactly as planned, I replied, stepping inside the elevator. If that boardroom twist hit hard, tomorrow is going to break them. And if you're watching this unfold, subscribe because the audit meeting, that's where the Raoul story begins. I pressed the button for the lobby, everything in place for tomorrow. I asked, eyes forward. Full audit reports, Michael confirmed. Breakdowns of every manipulated line item, plus a dependency flowchart that'll make their stomachs flip. I smiled faintly. They won't know what hit them. Images flashed through my mind. Uncle Charles's stunned silence. Bennett's pale desperation. Caroline's frantic whispers, the same family that once told me I didn't fit their pedigree. The termination letter, I asked. I'll have the final version in your inbox by 7, Michael replied. Good, I said. I want to review it before they see it. He hesitated. You're really pulling every contract. I met his gaze. Let's just say they're about to learn what earned leverage really looks like. The next morning, I arrived at Whitmore Industries. Headquarters an hour early, the same building that once turned me away without a second thought. This time, they'd be the ones watching the doors close. The security guard in the Whitmore Industries lobby, the same one from 5 years ago, stood up so fast he nearly spilled his coffee. Miss Blake, he stammered, blinking in surprise. Welcome back. He hesitated for a beat. The board's already gathering upstairs, early, I murmured, stepping past him. Funny what the scent of collapse does to people? Inside the executive elevator, the polished chrome caught. My reflection. The woman they dismissed years ago too soft, too distant from the Whitmore bloodline, was now the one holding the pen. Poised over their future. When I entered the boardroom, the air was thick with tension. Uncle Charles sat stiffly at the head of the table, though his posture had lost its bite. Bennett hunched beside the company counsel, shadows under his eyes. The independent board members were already murmuring, flipping through the summaries they'd received earlier that morning. Behind me, my audit team entered in silence. Analysts, forensic accountants, and operations strategists, each one handpicked, each embedded in this company's ecosystem for years, watching, gathering, waiting. I stepped to the podium and met the room with a calm smile. "Good morning. Shall we begin?" "Sienna," Charles said, his voice stripped of its usual control. "Before we proceed, perhaps we could speak privately." I tilted my head. "I suppose we've had more than enough private family discussions, haven't we?" I nodded at Michael. "Distribute the reports, please." The sound of rustling paper swept through the room like an approaching storm. Then came the gasps, a muttered curse. Someone whispered, This can't be right. These numbers." Another board member flipped through a page in disbelief. "They are accurate," I said, clicking to the first slide. "Let's begin. With the creative accounting," I looked at Bennett. "Would you care to explain how over $7,800,000 in losses quietly vanished under operational anomalies?" His lawyer started to speak, but I raised my hand. "Or shall we move to the fabricated client metrics, the phantom assets, or the section where, without Meridian Core Solutions contracts, Whitmore Industries is effectively insolvent?" "You're trying to destroy us," Bennett croaked. I didn't flinch. "No, you accomplished that on your own." "We're still family," he added weakly. "Family?" I repeated. "You mean when you told investors I wasn't fit for leadership? When Uncle Charles said my lineage didn't suit the Whitmore name?" "That was years ago," Charles said. Hastily, "Yes," I replied. "And while you polished old crests, I built something real." I clicked to the next slide. "Today, Meridian Core is 3 times your size. As of this quarter, 47% of Whitmore's revenue comes directly from us." The room froze. "This revenue disappears next Monday," I said calmly. When I threatened to pull the contract, chaos erupted. Voices overlapped, chairs scraped back in alarm. The legal team huddled together in panic. One board member swore aloud, clutching a crumpled report. And then Bennett broke. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he muttered, sinking into his chair, confidence shattered. "You can't just withdraw." "Sienna," Uncle Charles barked, face flushed. "On what grounds?" I asked, voice sharper than the AC hum. "That your niece outperformed your entire executive board? That your son's fraudulent reporting was exposed before the SEC intervened?" I leaned forward. "Let your attorneys depose Bennett. Can walk through phantom invoices and bury liabilities with a federal panel." Mr. Hafford, silver-haired and wearing a crimson tie, cleared his throat. "Miss Blake," he said carefully, "given what we've seen today, we may need to consider urgent leadership changes." "Leadership changes?" Bennett gasped. "This is our company." "Actually," I said, sliding a sealed envelope across the table, "maybe not for long." Inside were 2 neatly labeled documents. The first, I began. "Whitmore Industries agrees to a full executive restructuring. Bennett resigns. Independent oversight is installed. Meridian Core continues a limited partnership under strict supervision and quarterly audits." And the second. Uncle Charles asked, his voice muted. "A walk," I said plainly. "Every contract withdrawn. Our forensic report goes directly to federal authorities." I checked the time. "You have 1 hour." "This isn't business," Bennett snapped, voice frayed. "It's revenge." "No," I replied quietly. "It's exactly what you always claimed business was: ruthless, merit-based, and reserved for those who prove themselves." I gathered my tablet, my notes, and my silence. "I'll be in the office you once told me I'd never deserve." I added at the door, "The CEO suite." Funny how things change. I left them surrounded by facts, panic, and the weight of their own denial. By the time I reached my private suite overlooking Charleston Harbor, my phone was buzzing nonstop. "Mother, how could you do this to your uncle?" Father, you're tearing the family apart. Cousins, you've ruined everything. I ignored them. Instead, I opened a dusty folder in my inbox. The rejection email from Uncle Charles, dated exactly 5 years ago. Dear Sienna, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, we believe you lack the leadership instincts required at Whitmore Industries. Perhaps a support role would better suit your strengths. Sincerely, Charles Whitmore. I smiled, archived the email, printed it, and placed it gently on my soon-to-be desk. The board, faced with undeniable evidence of Bennett's fraud and Whitmore's dependence on Meridian Core, had only one choice: accept my terms or watch everything collapse. By sunset, it was done. Bennett quietly resigned, his pride more wounded than his legacy. Uncle Charles, stripped of influence, was ushered into early retirement. No objections, no thanks. Whitmore Industries, once a monument to nepotism and old Southern wealth, now operated under my supervision. Michael entered with the final signatures, carrying champagne in fluted glasses. Congratulations, he said with a grin. Not a takeover, I replied, watching Bennett and Charles pack into plain cardboard boxes. Just business, the kind they said I'd never understand. My phone buzzed again. Dozens of unread messages. Mother, you didn't have to humiliate them. Father, this isn't how family handles disagreements. Cousins, we grew up together. How could you? I typed one line in the family group chat. Don't worry about the family name. Whitmore Industries is finally in qualified hands. Then silenced the phone, turned to the window, and watched the sun dip over Charleston Harbor, painting the sky gold and violet. Peace settled in, not the fragile comfort of their approval, but the clarity of earned power. Success isn't about begging for a seat. It's about building something undeniable, forcing them to negotiate on your terms. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge, it's becoming their boss. Cole Charles was right about one thing. I wasn't qualified to work at Whitmore Industries. I was qualified to own it. So, how was your day? In this fast-moving world, we rarely ask, but I want to know. Good, bad, or somewhere in between. Being heard is the first step to being seen, if you made it this far. Thank you for walking through these quiet victories with me. When they said I didn't belong, I didn't fight for a seat, I built my own. And eventually, they had no choice but to stand around it. Have you ever been overlooked or underestimated by those who should have believed in you? Share your story. Quiet strength makes the loudest impact. Archive the rejection, build what they said you couldn't, and when they finally recognize you, make sure it's on your terms.